You're watching The End Zone, sponsored by Brahms.
The Sooners get it done against the Michigan Wolverines. They advance to 2-0 on this 2025 college football season. Along with Charles Thompson, I am Colby Daniels. Cameron Johnson is at Memorial Stadium. What a night it was for Oklahoma, a game in which they did not play their best football, but ultimately it goes their way. Big win. We're going to break it all down. But first, we got to touch base with Cameron Johnson out in Norman, Oklahoma. Cameron, what was the atmosphere as the clock hit 0 and Oklahoma fans celebrated a monumental win, especially in the Brent Venables era?
Yeah, it was a special night here in Norman, especially given that these fans have been up since the crack of dawn out at College game day. They've been celebrating all day, and what a way to honor that with a win here tonight over a Big Ten opponent, a blue blood no less. This is a really promising win for the Sooners, and fans are celebrating it. They're still clearing out of the stadium. The team is still on the field celebrating. There's just a lot to like out of this team, and I know we're going to break it all down in just a little bit, but the Sooners really felt like they were clicking on all sides of the ball. Still some areas of improvement, of course, but overall, a really promising win that should set the Sooners up in good shape for their next contest.
What was the atmosphere when Justice Haynes runs that 75-yard touchdown run to start the second half? And then Oklahoma had some missed opportunities that I think maybe contributed to a little nervous energy, but what was your impression of the way the fans were handling a lot of those mistakes?
Yeah, well, the first half felt like that defensive battle we were expecting, and then the Sooners go on to end it with a touchdown, so you assume they're going to come out with all the momentum on their side as well, but clearly the Michigan's getting their rhythm as well, so I think there's all of a sudden this moment of, okay, this really is going to be the tough matchup we thought it was, and then OU with a couple of mistakes, a muffed punt in there as well. There were cause for concern, but overall the Sooners just showcasing how they are in these tough scenarios, showing they can bounce back, and the crowd just never let up. I think that really played a part in the team's performance tonight, and just, I mean, an environment that I can't even put into words. It was truly special here in Norman.
Can you confirm if the goalposts are still standing?
Let's see. There's one, there's two.
Okay,
I think they might last tonight, but yeah.
Okay, they're not making their way to Campus Corner tonight. Cameron, we appreciate it. We'll touch base a little bit later in the show. Charles, what a win for Sooner Nation and for Brent Venables, who came into 2025, many people nationally saying he's on the hot seat. We looked at their schedule. The back half of this thing is an absolute gauntlet. This felt like a must-win game if they're going to have any success this season, and especially just, I think, in terms of creating some goodwill going into that SEC gauntlet that finishes with, I think, 6 of your final 7 opponents currently ranked inside the top 25.
Well, listen, I'll tell you, tonight watching this team, it was what I thought would happen this year. Obviously, the defense much better. We saw it. Other than the 75-yard run, they held Michigan under probably 2 or 3 yards per carry. When you look at how they were able to do it, a lot of dynamic things. I think that's a reflection of Brent Venables, who's now calling the plays. Once again, on the defense side of the ball, and golly, I mean, Arbuckle and Mateer together, as you can see, their stamp on the game is throughout. I think this team is a legitimate team. And what I came out of tonight's game thinking, Kobe, man, a lot of people watching this game tonight said, woo, Sooners are going to be a tough deal. No matter who's on their schedule, I think this team is built. They got a lot of rotation on the defensive side of the ball. I thought their offensive line looked about as good as I've seen them look in terms of protecting material.
Yeah.
And then he's just a difference maker, man. He is a gamer, and I really like his savvy, his moxie. And Arbuckle's not afraid to run him. And so I think with that extra element, man, this team's setting up to be a pretty much of a juggernaut.
You said making a statement. Let's go back to that first drive, and I want to run back through some of the highlights, how quickly he's getting the ball out and his overall decision-making process. You mentioned the defense. They were phenomenal, I thought, all night long. Kendall Daniels, I thought, really set the tone early. You know, he's kind of that hybrid linebacker, defensive back position, but he was all over the place, and I thought he especially stood out to me, but that group flew around throughout the first half.
No, is he the guy that transferred?
From Oklahoma State, yeah.
And then there's another guy that played linebacker that was playing, I guess was a lacrosse player that's on the defensive side of the ball, and obviously Brent recognized the talent.
Yeah.
I thought that kid made a lot of plays. I believe he was number 30. In the familiar with Brent knows where to put his players to utilize their talent on the defense side of the ball. is equally matched now, I think, with this team being balanced with Arbroath doing the same thing. And material, you talk about that maturity. You feel when you're watching the game, even though he throws an interception or he makes a bad pass, you never feel like he's out of his element. He's always in control. He's command out there on the field, orchestrating and demonstrating his leadership as the quarterback.
Defense shut out Michigan in the first half. First time the Wolverines have been shut out in the first half of a game since 2020. So, I mean, ending a pretty impressive stretch. And look, it's not like Michigan has had a bunch of dynamic offenses over the last 5 years anyway. But Oklahoma, I thought, absolutely stepped up to the challenge of this monumental matchup on a giant stage in the first half. Now, this was also a first half with a lot of mistakes. So you go into the locker room, Oklahoma's up 14-0, and you look at some of the mistakes and you think this could be a...
Giving themselves on the field, I think they got a chance to do some things. When they're on the side, they can't do anything for you.
They finally did rein it back in at the end of the half. They had another opportunity. They go right down the field. John Mateer makes a couple of big passes before ultimately punching it in with his legs, and Oklahoma had a big lead at the half. I know that Memorial Stadium was going wild as the Sooners went into the locker room. We've got to take a timeout. We got to talk about the second half because I think there was some nervous energy after that 75-yard touchdown run from Michigan. That is Charles Thompson. I am Colby Daniels. This is a special edition of the End Zone. Sooners take down the Michigan Wolverines 24-13, the final score from Norman. Welcome back to a special edition of the End Zone. Oklahoma takes down Michigan 24-13, the final in Norman, along with Charles Thompson. I am Colby Daniels. This was a fun game. I think the build-up to this game all week long, College game day in town, really in terms of just the national scope. There wasn't another big game this weekend, right? This was the only top 25 matchup in the country. So I think all those elements contributed to, when kickoff took place, this game feeling maybe much bigger than it was.
Was it 13 versus with 18?
15 versus 18, I think, were the rankings. I don't necessarily pay super close attention to the AP poll in week 2 because the reality is it doesn't matter anyway, right? It's the college football playoff poll that matters. But I mean, it's kind of a barometer, and these are two teams that are giant brands in college football. So Oklahoma has a 14-0 lead at halftime. I think everybody's feeling good about where they are. We were having the conversation at halftime. If you get a stop to start the second half, you're going to put that Michigan offense, and especially the freshman Bryce Underwood, in a really tough position the rest of the way, because then you have to start looking at the clock and counting possessions. It didn't go that way because the first play of the third quarter, Justice Haynes takes it 75 yards, and things felt a little uneasy.
Well, I think that's the example of being in right fits, run fits. There are certain things people don't understand, but angles of the offense always attack certain angles of the defense. And so what defense coordinators try to do in the run game is try to offset those angles. And I think on that particular play, they went heavy, overload to one side, got a cut back to the backside. And number 22 for the defense he was out of his alignment and therefore caused a big run there. And that was a big run to get this team back on track.
Mateer did answer with some Mateer magic. How many times did we see him break tackles in the backfield and then make a play? This was, as good a play as was made tonight.
Well, they say he squats, over 500 pounds?
I think it's like Jalen Hurts
I think
squatting
it shows
numbers.
In that, he's a very, very stout kid, and I think that's certainly a big advantage for him because he didn't go out very easy. He got sacked a couple times, but I think he certainly, on this, demonstrated his leg strength.
And then he would take it in for a touchdown, 21-7 Oklahoma. Once again, you start getting that feeling like they are so close to slamming the door or at least putting Michigan in a really awkward position. And, you have the muffed punt after this touchdown when it feels like Michigan is ready to lay down. And I thought the muff punt by Isaiah Satania really opened the door. Special teams were kind of a problem all night long, but the muff punt, in a position where it feels like Oklahoma had all the momentum, let Michigan back in the game.
Well, and I think that's key. Game 2 of the season, you have those kind of mistakes, you still come out with a win. I think still Brent will come back, obviously point out those mistakes. They can't have those as they move down in the conference play, but I think looking at that and make those corrections, getting the W tonight is a very better feeling than they would if they had lost the game.
The good thing is, after they gave up the ball on their own side of the field with that turnover, the defense held Michigan to a field goal. Michigan hits a big pass play on the next possession. Once again, in great field position.
And the defense is in the perfect position.
Yeah.
The guy makes a great play. So,
and they settle for another field goal. So at least when Michigan was able to get it down there late in the game, the defense answered the call. Fourth quarter, there's a big opportunity once again. Oklahoma marches down. Trick play is called. It's right there. Mateer puts the ball in the end zone, and it's off of Jaron Canick's hands, who, by the way, Canick was a monster all night tonight. This was really the only mistake he made. And then that is followed up by the missed field goal from Oklahoma.
Well, I don't necessarily know that it's a mistake by him. He just wasn't able to pull this one in. I think one of the things, if I was to critique Mateer today and watching him play a full game, is that he does throw off his elbow quite a bit. And so those passes like that, or when he's got to throw a ball with touch, he's had some difficult time doing that.
All that to say this, Oklahoma gets a massive win tonight. And there were multiple times in this game where I thought they made mistakes or didn't take advantage of opportunities where this could have been a blowout. And with all those mistakes, you lose the turnover battle tonight. Yeah. You lost the penalty battle. You still win by double digits. I mean, what is the ceiling for this team? We'll talk about that a little bit later in the show. But considering all of the self-inflicted wounds, to still deliver as many times as they did tonight, I thought it was a great win. There were a lot of things to like, I think, about the offense and the defense. And Brent Venables has to be over the moon with his team's overall performance.
Well, that last run there, you see a quarterback that decides not to go out of bounds.
Yeah.
I pointed it out during the game. This guy's got a moxie about him. I mean, I know that people will talk about it. At the end of the day, I think they live and die on the backs of him. I think him and Arbuckle will be a heavy boost for the offense. And we're already seeing what Brent's able to do once he's calling defense.
John Mateer was not the betting favorite to win the Heisman coming into the week. I bet going into next week, John Mateer is #1 in terms of the odds-on favorite to win the Heisman after a performance like this, and he's going to do nothing but continue to rack up big numbers. All right, we're going to touch base with Cameron Johnson again at Memorial Stadium on the other side of the break. Not to mention, we'll hear from John Mateer in his post-game on-field interview along with Charles Thompson. I am Colby Daniels. Sooners win 24-13 over the Michigan Wolverines. Oklahoma takes down Michigan 24-13, the final from Norman. We are awaiting the arrival of Brent Venables in the press conference room at Memorial Stadium. As soon as he arrives, we will send you to the press conference to hear from what I would imagine would be a very happy, ear-to-ear grin Brent Venables. When he's happy, and you can tell.
And you can tell he feels really good. And you can tell after the game the way that they obviously hoisted him up and celebrated with the team. Brent gave a lot of energy, I think, in preparation for this game. I think you saw that throughout. Even some of the pregame interviews I saw, he was really lined up and focused. And I think he felt good about this. This was I tell you, I think it was a win that catapults Brent Venables, establishes, in my opinion, the beginning of him getting things right on track. And I don't mean from a standpoint of, what they'll do the remainder of this year in terms of saying, okay, now I'm going to drink the Kool-Aid and say they're going to win this and win that.
Yeah.
But I think they sent the message tonight that Oklahoma is not to be messed with. You're going to have to pay attention to them.
Let's check with Cameron Johnson once again in Norman at Memorial Stadium. Cameron, it's a Sooner win. Obviously, we're going to talk about what's next for Oklahoma and maybe what the ceiling is for this team. But I think the feeling is, despite not playing their best football, this was still a really impressive performance.
Oh, absolutely, and that's what you want to see out of a team because, they're in the SEC for crying out loud. It's not going to be easy. You're going to get punched in the mouth sometimes, so your ability to respond to tough situations despite the odds, that takes you a long way in this league and college football as a whole, and they showcased exactly that tonight. They proved that they could do it, and I know Illinois State, it's never a great measuring stick in that first game of the season, but I think OU took all the good from it, showcased it again here tonight, and really showed that this is a team that if they can just keep it together the way they did tonight, they can go really far.
Your overall impression of John Mateer, the way that he just commanded the offense. Obviously, we know the playmaking ability, but there's a swagger that he plays with that seems to be completely infectious to the rest of the roster.
Yeah, I hate to just keep making the comparison. I know he's heard it. We've talked about it a lot. But this feels like the vibes that Baker Mayfield brought to the Sooners when he was at quarterback one here. He just plays. I've heard you guys use the word moxie. He's got so much of it. He showed that he is not afraid of these big challenges. Just against a team like Michigan, he was able to take full control of this game. Even led the Sooners in rushing, had more than half of their yardage tonight, which, do with that information what you will. But he's just so impressive to watch, and that swagger really empowers this team behind him, and I think they can do a lot with that.
I'll be really curious to find out what the post-game conversation around the overall run game is. He was their leading rusher. I don't think you want John Mateer running the football 20 times a game, especially when you get into SEC conference play. He's going to be a part of that equation. But once again, this is not a game at the end of the day where you look at the running backs and what they overall did from a production standpoint and think, Oklahoma really got it going.
Yeah, no, I feel like they kind of got it together there towards the end. I liked the rotation between Torrey Blaylock and Javonte Barnes. It looked like they were starting to kind of figure out the pieces, so it'll be really interesting to see what they do with that in the next game. But still, a lot of strides. They've still got it up on the scoreboards, just under 4 yards per carry an average tonight, so a lot of room to grow into there. But I think that they showed promising signs toward the end. We'll see if they can capitalize off of it.
Cameron, we appreciate it. Enjoy the celebration in Norman. I imagine it's going to be a wild night for the hours to come. We thank you. Charles, we talked about the run game. They didn't run the football well until they had to. That final drive, what were the numbers on that? It was 16 plays, 78 yards, 8 minutes and 27 seconds. They ran the ball on demand when they needed to in the fourth quarter, and that's probably the most valuable aspect of a running game.
I think you even heard the commentators talked about it. What was most impressive about tonight's effort towards the end, when they needed to run the ball and everyone knew they had and was going to run the ball, they were able to run the ball. And that was impressive, to move the ball down the field and really close the game out with that last field goal and then put everything in perspective. I don't necessarily have an overly concern about him running the ball in terms of Mateer, because that's what Arbuckle called for him. These weren't scramble runs where they were forced runs.
Right.
These was runs that they had prepared for and called in the game in the scheme of things. I was impressed by that.
What's the ceiling for this team? Where do they go from here? We'll talk about it next on the End Zone. A statement win for the Sooners. 24-13 is the final. Oklahoma defeats Michigan in only the second ever matchup between the programs. Oklahoma 2-0 now
2-0
against Michigan all-time. That 1975 Orange Bowl win being the first. I said statement win, Charles. We were talking. This feels like a game where Oklahoma maybe put some people on notice. This is who we are. This is what we can be. There were things to clean up, but there's a lot to like, and if you are an opposing coach on the Oklahoma roster, there are things that you have to look at that you weren't maybe paying attention to a year ago.
Number one, they were physical up front. Obviously, we talked about the defensive front, obviously rotating the bodies. I think that was very key for them to be able to establish that against a great opponent. This is a Big Ten opponent that obviously dominates in the Big Ten. It's not like they're on the downswing. They recently won a national championship. They were able to protect Mateer pretty much throughout the entire evening. And I think most important, they were able to have a quarterback and an offense coordinator that looked like they was completely in sync. So when you add those two things together, I think it's a formula for an opponent when Oklahoma's on their schedule. Yeah. I mean, they're going to have to take notes of that.
All right, Brent Venables is at the podium. Let's listen to the head ball coach.
It really felt like there's a lot of the game we played really, really well, and at times had an opportunity to really pull away. We had some self-inflicted issues that kept things a little closer, but like a championship style program that Michigan represents, man, they kept throwing haymakers as well. But we're super proud of our players and coaches, figuring out, finding a way to win. Won a really good, tough game where, again, a lot of the statistical things I know we won. We were minus in the turnover margin. Fantastic. In the red zone was a huge difference in the game. Playing some elite level defense. Just the mindset. The mindset. Sets the tempo for everything. And I'm really proud of the toughness that our guys played with on defense. Time and time again, turned them back and either held them to no points or a field goal, got off the field there at the end. Again, offensively, really felt like they controlled the tempo of the day. They're playing a really good defense, very well coached. They got a great roster, an elite roster. 408 to 288. We gave up the 75-yard run, put them in a bad call. We got to play it better. We have to adjust it better and do some things fundamentally better, but put them in a bad call right out the gate and took the air out of the stadium.
All right, that was Brent Venables as we wrap up the show, run out of time. By the way, you can listen to the rest of that on our YouTube page, so go check that out. But, Charles, final thoughts on this OU team and their win?
I think they're a solid football team. I think they're a team that's well coached, both now offensively and defensively. And the last times we've had that, we've had made championship runs. So, listen, when you've got a steady and solid quarterback, we've had 5 quarterbacks over the last, 2017 to 2021 that have started more than one game that are starters now in the NFL. I think you can add John Mateer to that. He'll be in that along with that list of great quarterbacks for Oklahoma. I think he'll have a great year. He's
going to be a guy that if I had to bet on it, barring some sort of weird injury or something completely derailing, probably going to be a New York City kind of guy in December.
Yeah.
And for Oklahoma, again, we know what the defense is. Feels like they've taken another step in terms of dominance, and now you have an explosive offense to pair with it. Fun things to come this season. For Charles Thompson, I'm Colby Daniels. Everybody have a great weekend.